Welcome to Real Estate for Real Life podcast. I'm Ryan Wilson.
And I'm Courtney Gouchman.
On this episode, we are going to be talking about trust is the product.
We have Charlotte Manning, partner and top producer at Wilson Group, joining us today. And we're really excited to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. As someone who gets the top referrals on our team, we're excited to hear a little bit more about how you build trust with your clients and what that looks like to you.
I'm excited to get into it.
Well, thanks for joining us, Charlotte. So as we all know, trust, is it built or is it earned? Like how, when you start meeting with a client and you have that first conversation with a client, like how do you build and earn that trust?
I honestly think that it's both earned and built over time. I think clients can really feel the difference of someone who's confident in what they're saying and advising. And a lot of that comes from the initial consultation, but has continued to be built throughout the process and the further along we get.
Exactly. You can't just expect that someone's going to start trusting you right off the bat. So I agree. Tell us a little bit about what your initial consultation looks like and how you do start to build that foundation of trust.
I think that my initial buying and selling consultation is really the most important meeting that I have with a client because it gives us the opportunity for me to lay out what to expect every step of the way, anticipate questions that may come up, and be able to set clear expectations of what it means to work with myself and with the Wilson Group.
Yeah, that's great. And, some people go into that meeting and they're fearful. It's a big thing for them buying a house. And I know you've talked about this with the team, you instill confidence in them based on the way that you educate them. So tell us a little bit about, do you take them through the entire process when you meet with them for the first time?
I always try to meet with my new potential clients in person because I do think that that's another way that kind of eases people's mind to get face to face, realize that, we're all people here, and even though this is something that I do every day, I recognize that it's oftentimes the first time someone's doing this or they haven't done it in multiple years. So I always find it important to start from the beginning of the process, explain what it means to work with myself and what to expect in buying or selling in every step of the way.
That's awesome. You approach it as from an educational standpoint, which we talk about a lot. Like, how do you think that separates you from another agent that just might go out and show them a property and meet them there and not kind of educate them? How does that separate you?
I think a lot of people kind of wing it, or they think because this client was referred to me by someone I know, or this client is a friend of mine, that they don't need to take that time to educate them and really understand their wants and needs. So whether I'm meeting with somebody that I met randomly at an open house or somebody that has been my friend for 10 years, I always think that it's really important to sit down with them, answer any questions they have, and make sure they have a clear understanding of what to expect in either buying or selling.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit about that actual presentation, what you come prepared with in terms of materials. I know obviously there are some people that are visual learners and some people that are a little bit more auditory, right? So what do you do to prepare for that first initial meeting to look polished and professional?
I do have a slide deck presentation that also comes with a coordinated buyer and seller packet that they can take home with them and also digest on their own time later on. But in our initial presentation, I start with what it means to work with myself, what they can expect, and then go into talking more about what they're looking for, their wants and needs, and then the process from start to finish.
Amazing. After that first initial meeting, what is your next step with the client? How do you kind of continue to, whether they are ready to go right away, they want to sign in the dotted line, they want to go look at a property, or if they're saying, I'm actually like a year out. How do you navigate that, and how do you continue to be a resource for them without being salesy and pushy?
I always explain that I'm happy to work as quickly or as patiently as needed, whether they're looking to buy something that week or a year down the line. I make it clear that that decision is up to them, and I'm going to support them and advise them on their behalf. But at the end of the day, they're going to be the decision maker, and only they can decide what's right for them. So I always make sure I end the meeting with, here's what you can expect, here are the next steps, so that that person's not left wondering, okay, well, where do we go from here? So whether that means I'm going to put them in touch with a trusted loan officer so they can get the financial part of the transaction solidified prior to us going out and looking, setting up their MLS search, connecting them with any potential vendors that they might need throughout the process, lenders, attorneys, and then, where we take it from there, whether we're going out and seeing properties right away or getting a feel for the market, seeing what's out there for inventory and waiting until they're ready to see places.
That's awesome. And I mean, you touched on a few things. I mean, obviously, as a real estate agent, you are talking to home inspectors, you're talking to loan officers, you're talking to attorneys, you're talking to appraisers. You're explaining a lot of complex issues that are probably, for many people, if it's a first-time home buyer, and I know you work with people that have bought townhouses before, but for a lot of these people, you're explaining these unique things, these complex issues, sometimes can be uncomfortable. How do you find explaining these things to people to instill confidence that, you kind of got their back and you're going to look out for them?
When I explain the process, I also explain that there's risk associated with any transaction. So depending on what the particular situation is for the property that they're buying and selling, they may be more comfortable taking on more risk. If it's for example, multiple offer situation and they really love the property and want to put themselves in the best position to get that, I explain how we can strategize and be able to take on more of that risk in a way that's digestible because they understand any worst case scenarios ahead of time as opposed to being multiple weeks into the transaction.
Okay.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great.
So, I mean, to me, what I really like about that is you're not avoiding having that tough conversation, but you're also having it so early up front before the emotions run high. So before they're nervous, before they're scared, because they don't really even know yet what those are going to feel like, you're already explaining the risks associated and you're explaining how you're going to protect them. So I think that sounds like you're already really laying that massive foundation for trust and continuing it along the way as things get emotional, right? Because not every sales industry is going to have that facet. For us, because our transactions can be long and it's usually the largest asset somebody is purchasing in their life, the emotions can run high. How do you start to navigate those tough conversations? So maybe when you're more in the negotiation stage, how do you keep them calm and keep them continuing to listen and hear your advice?
I think I'm very even-keeled when I explain things to clients. I like to lay all the options on the table and then explain that there might not be a right or wrong way to approach it, and the right decision might be, what they feel comfortable with. So I try to stay calm, explain everything in a digestible way that they can really understand, and then support however they choose to proceed from there.
You're the top agent at Wilson Group for referrals, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what you think goes into how you operate for clients to want to give your name out and refer you business? And, sometimes they're sending their family, their friends, people that really matter to them. What do you think has lent to that?
I think it's a combination of education. I think our team in general really tries to approach every transaction from an educational perspective because educated buyers and sellers are confident buyers and sellers. And when you're talking about what's probably going to be their biggest asset, they want to be really confident in their decisions. So in addition to that, I also try and get as much FaceTime with my clients as possible. So from the initial meeting, trying to have that in person and showing up for them, whether that be showings, open houses. Even if I think that they're going to hate a particular property, I'm always happy to go see it with them and treat it as a learning experience because we can talk about, okay, this is how the systems at this particular property work. This is some of the pros and cons from this, and being there to walk through them with that because they don't always know what to look for.
Mm-hmm. So you educate them, you prepare them for next steps, right? You prepare for all of the showings, all of the things that they want to see, and it sounds like you work hard, right? So this seems like a simple recipe.
Yeah, easy job, right?
Yeah, seems so simple, right? But clearly you're going so above and beyond because it shows up constantly in the way that your clients rave about you. Right. So I would love to hear a little bit more about how do you keep these long-term relationships, right? Because after the transaction closes, you're clearly staying in touch with everyone in order for them to be referring all of their friends and family. And it's such an amazing skill set that you have. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. I'm assuming most of it's authentic and genuine, but I'd love to hear, like, how do you balance that?
Of course, yes. I think that a lot of it does come naturally from just liking building relationships with people and really enjoying helping people through big decisions. But obviously, after a transaction closes, I always make it clear that our relationship doesn't end at the closing table. I want to be a resource for anything that they could need going forward, whether that means vendor recommendations or, opinions on design, etc. But also just keeping it personal. I love to go see places that people have moved into after the fact, or a lot of people have big milestones happen throughout the purchasing and selling process. They're either growing their families or they're moving for new jobs, and I love to hear more about their actual lives after the closing. It's weird to be in touch with someone constantly and then just lose that connection. I think it's easy to maintain it when you like what you do and you love the people you work with.
Oh, that's really cool. So even after the closing, which obviously that's the hard work, you meet with them, you show them properties, you go through the process, there's some severe ups and downs, not everyone's winning every property they put an offer on. So throughout that relationship, obviously you're very, very close. After the closing, you mentioned you stay in close touch. How, from a real estate perspective, can you continue to add a ton of value to these clients? Whether you mentioned some vendors or keeping up with them, what are some of the things you do to stay in touch with them and add value from a real estate perspective?
I try to be proactive with anticipating what somebody might need after the fact, whether they are planning to redo a bathroom or put an addition on. And I try and think, who can I connect that I know is going to do a really good job for them? And I think that being not just somebody that provided with them with a service, but somebody that is available to be a resource for anything that has to do with real estate, whether they are curious about the market or, want to see what their neighbors' homes are selling for, or just need something that has to do with their home. And they know that I'm always available for that.
That's great. And I guess if you're going to be recommending vendors and you're going to be giving interior design advice and all these things that you do on a day-to-day basis, that's in turn going to be best for their ROI as well in the future. So when they call you in 8 to 12 years to sell, you know that they're going to have made the proper improvements because you've stayed in touch with them, updated them on the market, and said, you know what, don't overspend in that bathroom. Let's put that money elsewhere. So I love that you give that advice. That's really, really cool.
You're helping them maintain the value of the home, the product that you sold, right? So that's incredible. I would also say, so switching gears, right? You stay in touch with them and you do this phenomenal job of continuing to add value, which at that point, I would imagine that separates you a lot from other agents, right? Other agents, you collect a paycheck, and I'm not saying all people do this, but your job is essentially done, right? But you're continuing to add all this value. What systems do you use to stay kind of, on top of that while also juggling all the current business that you have on your plate?
I think it's really important not to just rely on memory. It can be easy when you're talking to someone, whether it be a client or even friends, to think, oh, I'm definitely going to remember this conversation. Sometimes people put their home search or the selling process on pause for multiple months, if not years. And I think it's really important to take clear notes, put them in your database, and really make sure that you have that information available so that you don't let anything slip through the cracks.
Yeah. How impressive would that be? I mean, you meet with a client, they say, yeah, we're putting it on pause for a couple of years. And then they say, hey, Charlotte, ready to pick that search back up. And you say, all right, pulling up the file on my CRM. And next thing you know, you say, how's Tommy doing? Who was a 2-year-old, now a 4-year-old. How's he doing? So that's really impressive. And that's smart. And it's not just smart from a sales perspective, but it's you're adding a ton of value to them as well, because they don't want to have to repeat every single thing you've talked about. And, it's like it's a new conversation. So that's really impressive.
Yeah. I also think that based on just how genuine and authentic you are, people act like a database makes it less personal. However, what it really does is it allows you to retain all of the information that people have shared with you, because you're not going to remember every detail about somebody's home search. And it is really hard to remember dates or special things, right? But you're caring enough to actually add that into your database, and then you're caring enough to continue to stay up to date with it, and then do the work to stay in touch with them, to reach out and to actually acknowledge those special things. So it sounds like there's no doubt in my mind as to why you get all these referrals. Can you tell us what would be some advice that you would give a new agent or any person in sales who's looking to increase referrals and get more? How would they get those organically, through being authentic, however it might be? What would you suggest?
I think the biggest way to do that is by enhancing the client experience for the people that have already put their trust in you. If they already know that you're going to provide a great experience because you did that with them, they're going to be so much more comfortable recommending you to the people they care about. So I think taking every opportunity to add value throughout the transaction will ultimately lead to referrals, because they're going to feel confident recommending you to friends if they know that you're going to do a great job by them.
That's great. I love hearing that. Are there any habits or anything on a daily basis or a weekly basis or even a monthly basis that you've put into place to make sure that you're continuing to give such a high level of customer service?
I think trying to anticipate what someone's questions or next steps would be and answering that before they have the chance to ask is important. For example, there are some lulls throughout the transaction where if somebody just got their offer accepted and we're signing purchase and sale a week later, I set expectations with, okay, we're going to be signing the purchase and sale in the next few days. You're going to want to be getting your documents over to the lender. What questions do you have? How can I help right now? And asking that before they have the chance to say, hey, what's going on, just leads to a better, more smooth transaction overall.
Yeah, you're just all over it. It sounds like you just have all these good systems and you're just paying attention to every aspect of it. Do you utilize calendars, templates? Like, what do you use to do that at such a high level? Because the amount of transactions you're juggling, plus the amount of past clients that you're staying in touch with and connecting with on a regular basis, there's a lot going on, right? You wear many hats all day, every day. I'd love to hear about what are some quick and dirty little tips that you could give people?
Like sombrero, cowboy hat, like which one are we wearing most often?
A top hat.
A top hat.
Yeah, definitely a top
You're
hat.
going with the sombrero.
Neither did I, but
below average jokes are the name of the game, right?
Cue the laugh track. I utilize my Apple Calendar a lot. If something's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist to me. So I make sure as soon as I set something up, I put that in there so that I don't forget about it. In addition to using my database to remind me about important steps through a transaction, when it would make sense to reach out to someone who might not be in a transaction yet, but in the process of getting ready to either buy or sell. In addition to, I do have a couple templates that I use just to outline important steps throughout the process. And usually I'm tweaking those to make it relevant to that specific client.
Yeah, I think one thing that we can't underestimate, just with everything that you've talked about so far, is that you've clearly taken a massive amount of time to educate yourself, not only on real estate, where that's where your confidence clearly comes from. You're super educated on real estate, the transactions, the processes. You also have educated yourself on a process, whether it's our team's process or the processes you've created as well. How do you kind of structure that part into your day, that learning piece? Or maybe at this point you're already so well seasoned, but how did you learn all of that stuff? We don't have a classroom, right, in sales and in real estate. So what were some of the tips and tricks that you could give us that led to you getting that level of education at this point?
I think of a lot of that comes from actually doing. You can sit down and take a million classes and pick up, good tidbits here and there, but nothing is going to give you more experience than actually doing things and actually figuring out, okay, maybe this process works a little bit better, or this is a point where another check-in might make sense because people are feeling a little bit unsure of what that next step is. So I think through trial and error and just understanding where there might be any gaps in the process and working with our team so that we can make sure that there's the correct process in place so that people feel fully supported.
Nice. Well, I think that consistency and the level of preparation, you are the most high-level prepared person I think I've ever worked with. I think that those just show in everything that you do with your clients. And there's a reason why people continue to give you referrals and people want to work with you. Anything that you can say that you'd be giving advice to for someone who is looking to, like, they might not naturally have that, but they want to start somewhere? Like, what would be a good starting point?
I think, for example, when I'm preparing for showings, a lot of people print out an MLS sheet and just think, all right, good to go. But I try to look at, okay, what else in the area is selling? Has anything on the street recently gone under contract? Calling those agents, figuring out what the level of activity was, getting a feel for the market in that specific neighborhood and the property history. When did it last sell? What is the seller's motivation? What's most important to them? It's not always price. Sometimes it's timeline and having to be out by a certain date. But knowing all that going into it so that you're not standing there not having answers to questions that could come up makes the client feel more confident, even if they're looking at 5 places, having that information about all 5 of them, because you never know which property someone might be most inclined to want to move forward with. So I think having that information up front and being super prepared, whether the person's looking at 10 places or, really serious about one.
Yeah. And that's clearly giving them more confidence too, making them feel more comfortable with what's happening in the market by you giving that additional information. You're going the extra mile. So that is incredible. I think if there's any good takeaways from what we're hearing today and what you're teaching is that you kind of can't take your job at face value, no matter what you're doing, right? No matter what sales this is. You need to know your product inside and out. You need to know the competition. So for us, the competition would be, other listings or other areas in the market, right? To actually have that data and to be able to provide it with your clients. And then you need to educate, right? And all of those factors mixed with the calm demeanor and making sure that you're delivering the message in a clear, concise way. I think those are all what goes into your success here and how you're able to build your business as quickly and as successfully as you have.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times with some seasoned agents, they think just because, I've been doing this for 30 years, I can say that and have the person automatically trust me because I've been doing it for so long. But I think what's really important is never underestimating the power of education and really coaching somebody through what they can expect and leading with knowledge and not just the fact that you've been doing it for X long.
I love that you said that because that goes back to our original conversation of, is trust built or is it earned? And I think that that's a really valid point of, it's both, right? You can't just expect it due to the amount of years you have in the industry. You have to still work towards it, build it, and earn it, right? So I think that this has been really helpful. I really love it. So whether you're a seasoned agent, whether you're a brand new agent, whether you're in a different sales industry, I think there's a lot to take away from just learning a little bit of how to actually earn that trust and how to really truly get people to want to work with you and to then also want to refer you business too. So I really am appreciative of everything that you've been able to share with us.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
All right, this is Real Estate for Real Life. I'm Courtney Gouchman.
And I'm Ryan Wilson.
See you soon.
Thanks.